Welcome back to my channel, Crafting with Nordy. In today's video, we are going to go over chipboard and Daveyboard. Now, Daveyboard, if you've heard of Daveyboard, it is a higher density binder's board or book board for bookbinding. And it's really strong, it's dense, and it's acid free, which is what you want for bookbinding. You want all the materials you're using to be acid free so that it holds up, you know, over time. You're not going to have issues with warping and yellowing and things like that. Now, chipboard is very versatile. It is used in the crafting world for various different things, and it's more considered an all-purpose board, right? You can get away with making something with it like a book, but it's not really going to hold up over time, right? A lot of us crafters, we call them a one and done kind of thing when we make certain things. Like, it's cute, it's going to be used very briefly, not for a long amount of time, but that's the intent. It becomes a one and done thing. So one and done projects, chipboard is great for little decorative things and whatnot. It's great for that kind of stuff. It's a lot easier to cut. It's a lot easier to get your hands on. It's, you know, it's just a lot easier to find, and it's a lot cheaper. Now, the way that they're made is different as well. Daveyboard's made using a single ply wet lap construction, and it provides superior dimensional stability, she says, Paper Craft Panda says in her article here, and a high degree of flexibility. So it makes it really strong. Its corners, you know, have a higher crush resistance. Now, chipboard, if you've ever ordered chipboard and it's come in and the corners are all dinged and damaged, and you're like, well, that's because it's chipboard. You know what I mean? It doesn't hold up to being dinged up, you know? It just doesn't. If you hit the corners are going to be damaged. If it gets bent, it's going to be bent, you know? That's just the way it is. And it is, chipboard is made the same way that particle board is made. So it's using all of the leftover, you know, sawdust and whatnot, and glue. So it's made, you know, in layers like that. And the glue that is used for that is the urea formaldehyde. And they may also use other chemicals as well in making the board. So you can get the board, you know, it can come either acidic or acid free. But like I said, when you're making books and things that you want to last, you want them to be acid free so that they're not gonna yellow and warp. Now, Daveyboard is stronger, it's more dense, it's a lot harder to cut, and chipboard it's more brittle. It's you know, you're gonna bend it and it's probably just gonna break. You know, and they both have a grain direction, and so just like in my last video when we talked about grain direction with paper, grain direction is also important. In chipboard, you want the grain to be going parallel with the spine, so a long grain up and down. Daveyboard's going to be more expensive. It's going to be hard to find in smaller sheets, so you're probably going to, if you need smaller sheets, you're going to have to get them custom cut. Otherwise, you're going to have to try to cut it yourself, and it's going to be a lot harder to cut it because it's a lot more dense. So if you got weak hands, arthritis, anything like that, you might want to get it custom cut. Now, the chipboard, like I said, it's less expensive, it's easier to find in smaller sheets, and it's easier to cut it and stuff with like you know, one of your knives or cutting boards and things like that. I've used various different things. If you want to make something that's going to be lasting, that's intended to last for like family, you know, to be passed down, something that's going to have sentimental value, things like that, like a keepsake of some sort, then you're going to want to go with Daveyboard. You know, you're going to want to go with products that are going to be higher quality and acid free so that they last over time. And chipboard, no matter how thick you get it, it's still going to have that fault where it's brittle. It will be brittle over time, and it's just not going to hold up. And so even if you find this thick chipboard and you think, oh, that's going to last forever, it's not. The Daveyboard's still going to be the better choice. So Daveyboard for long-term stuff, and chipboard for short-term stuff. Now, where you can get it, she mentions Hollanders, Talus Online, and Colophon Book Arts. Now, I have ordered from Hollanders. I found Hollanders when I was just looking at reviews on Amazon of other bookbinding stuff a couple of years ago, and somebody mentioned them in the comments, so I looked them up, and they ended up being just great quality. The ordering process is very simple. They have lots to choose from as far as I mean, everything in bookbinding. I mean, your end papers, your book cloth, and all the different types of book cloth, leather, you know, whatever you're looking for, they're gonna have it, usually, you know. And their description is very, you know, clear. And if you do want to get Daveyboard from them and have it custom cut, they will give suggestions based on what type of thing that you're going to be making. Like if you're making this or if you're making that, they'll let you know that the thickness for this one is going to be great for that, you know. So they give a lot of information in the descriptions. You can get a quote from them to see how much it's going to cost if you need it to get a custom cut. It was cheaper to buy the sheets, and I'm going to cut those myself. Not sure how hard it's going to be to cut. I imagine it's going to be very hard. But we're going to cover that in this video as well. We're going to go over experimenting with, you know, different cutting tools that I have in my craft room, which you may likely have as well, and gluing them up and how they behave and things like that. So we're going to go over that as well. So this video is not sponsored by anybody at all. Hollanders is just a company that I tried out, and they happen to have really good quality stuff, and I haven't had any issues with them. The stuff comes in packaged really well. I've done large orders with them, and everything is always there, so they're very thorough. If you do need a request for a quote, they usually get, like, the next day you'll have an email from them. So they're pretty good with that. I can't speak for the other two on here. You'll have to check those out yourself. So I'm going to bring over all that stuff over here, and we're going to start going over the differences with the chipboard and the Daveyboard. Now, when you're looking for chipboard and or bookboard, binder board, Daveyboard, all these options are going to come up. Like, let me tell you, I looked up Daveyboard and I wasn't finding Daveyboard. I was finding chipboard. And so even if you're looking for craft paper, like the brown craft paper, the thinner one, it's going to give you the option when you look for chipboard for that. And like I said, the chipboard's coming in the brown, the black, the white. It just depends on what you want to use it for. I like the brown. I feel like the white, and let me see, do I have the white still here, or did I put it back? There it is. The white is the weakest one to me. I mean, you could just, even checking each of the grain, it just feels the weakest. It even, you know, it just doesn't feel right. The black too, it's got that same, it feels stronger than this one, but like you could see, this one moves more and this one doesn't. So it stays kind of flat, and this one is like flexible, you know. So this one feels weaker to me than the black. And then the white, you can feel it's almost, they move kind of the same. But this one feels stronger than the black one. And as far as like how they move, you can just kind of feel like they're not gonna like fold on you while you're holding it like this, you know. Like the thin one is gonna, you know, it's gonna bend. Like, you know, if you cardstock paper or whatever, it's gonna fold. So I can just kind of feel it in that sense, you know, like when I pick it up and everything, like it just feels sturdier to me. Okay, so I went ahead and cut to test how well these crocodiles poke a hole through these, and it was pretty easy. It's pretty the same for all of them. So there was no issue with any of these. They all went through pretty good. No like resistance. So it's not hurting my wrist, because I get a lot of pain in my wrist from doing nails for a long time. So all these cut through fine. It went through the Daveyboard fine as well. It wasn't very hard at all. And okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut each one with just my regular scissors. So, of course, the thin stuff cuts just fine. Go with it's a little bit harder to cut this one, but I can still cut it. It's about the same, a tad easier. This one's a little bit harder to cut it, but so I'm feeling it now in my wrist when I'm getting into the thicker ones. Yeah, that one doesn't, you could see the distance in comparison I can cut. And so this one I was able to cut up to there before it gave me resistance. And with the thicker 12 by 12, it's more dense. Even though the thickness isn't that much of a difference, it's more dense, so it's harder for me to cut through, and I only got about that far with that one. So it's getting a little bit harder, and I can definitely feel it in my wrist and in my hand. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the Daveyboard. Okay, so let's show you the difference. So I was able to go in with the chipboard about a good, I don't know, an inch, just over an inch, maybe an inch and an eighth before it gave me some of that resistance. And then with the 12 by 12 chipboard, I was able to get in about 3/4 of an inch before I got that resistance, and I could feel the tension in my hand. And the Daveyboard, I got in about a 1/2 an inch, I would say, just under a 1/2 an inch before it gave me resistance in cutting. So that's something to keep in mind. These are titanium nonstick scissors. So yeah, that wasn't gonna go that wasn't gonna go very far. And if you could imagine you're trying to cut, yeah, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work with scissors for that. So it's good to know these things before you go and buy this stuff, and then you're like, great, now I gotta go buy something else, okay? So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and set up my cutting mat, and we'll try my Fiskars, I don't know what you call these round cutters. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my Fiskars, rolling cutter here. I'm gonna give this one a try. Now I'm not trying to be perfect here, I'm just trying to see how well it cuts through. I gotta give it a little bit more pressure. And, just a tad more pressure to cut the thin cardstock. And now we'll try the whiteboard. Like I said, this one's probably the weakest of all of them as far as the thicker boards go. Be careful when you're doing anything like this. You don't want to go over and cut yourself. Let's see. So about 2 times with good pressure. So double the amount of pressure that I was giving with that. 2 times to cut that strip. Now with the black one, about 2 times as well. Just maybe a tad more, about the same to cut that white one. Let's see, now this is the brown one. Okay, so this one took a little bit more pressure, and it took three tries for that, for the brown 8.5 by 11. And now this is my denser 12 by 12, a little bit thicker. And let's see. So for this one, I was cutting against the grain, and you know, it was harder. That was with the grain, and it took 2 tries. The white was against the grain, and it took 2 tries. And the thinner one was with the grain, okay? Now the grain runs differently between the white and the brown. The grain was running the same direction, and the black, it's running the opposite direction. Okay, let's see. So this is against the grain for this one. So we can do a comparison of with the grain and against the grain when cutting this as well. Okay. I'm giving this a lot more pressure. That's 3 tries already, and I'm not even through it. That's 4 tries, and I'm barely getting through. So I would say about 4 or 5 tries before you start actually getting through, and that is going across the grain. I want to see if how it holds up. Let me get a longer ruler. I want to see how it holds up going with the grain, as opposed to against it like we were going with this one. Three tries going with the grain on the 12 by 12. 4 tries going against the grain, and let me tell you, I was struggling. So it goes to show how hard it's going to be to cut things when you go across the grain as opposed to going with the grain. Now this one was against the grain. I'm going to flip it over. This is the 8.5 by 11 brown chipboard. Yeah, that was a lot easier going with the grain. 2 tries going against the grain. I think this one was about, what do we say, about 3 tries. Going with the grain, it was only 2 tries. Now this one we went against the grain. It took 2 tries because the black one's going the opposite grain as everything else. So we're gonna try and go against the grain and see how it goes with the black one. Two tries, it wasn't hard at all. So we know with the white one we went with the grain, so we'll go, we went against the grain, so we'll go with the grain on the white one. And it just feels softer too, the white one. And that wasn't hard either. So, but I mean, that's good to know that going with the grain was a lot easier to cut than going against the grain. Okay, so now we're gonna try the Davey board. My sacrificial piece right here, because, well, I know I'm not gonna use this whole thing, so I don't mind. I'm cutting on the the rough side. I'm not cutting on my good straight side over here. Okay. So I imagine this is going to be a lot harder. I'm going to try and start over here where I had my cut. Maybe I'll start on the outside of my cut. Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that ain't doing nothing. Try again. I can't even get it to roll over. Nothing. I'm giving this a lot of pressure. I'm not getting through on that. I mean, it's stopping me right at the get-go. I'm going like, I gotta really like start jamming it in there, and it's, yeah, that's not, these are not gonna cut it. Yeah, it's not gonna, it's just like kind of shredding. It's not, let me see if I can come closer to the edge. Try and keep my cut in the exact same line. That's 3 tries already, and man, that's really, really hurting my wrist. It's probably dulling out my blade. And I'm giving it a lot of pressure. Let's see, so I'm going across the grain with that. So this is running long grain, so we're gonna try it with the grain and see if that's easier. With the grain, 3 tries. Against the grain, 3 tries didn't even get me all the way through. I guess it's still connected underneath. So that's with my rolling cutter. And if you have arthritis, if you have weak wrists, aching hands, and man, mine's spent now. Yeah, it's not gonna, scissors and this are gonna be really difficult to cut this. Okay, so this is with the grain. This is the white board. With the grain is fine. 3 tries. I could feel it cutting in there, like getting jagged. It's getting rough. Not very clean. Against the grain, like I said, it's always gonna be harder. And that was against the grain. With the grain, easy. Those are all pretty much the same. This is going to be with. About 3 tries with. tries with the X-Acto knife. So about 4 tries both ways with the grain and against it. Let's see. Okay, this is against the grain with the 12 by 12. And definitely be careful. I don't recommend the rotary cutters just because you have less control with them. But it's what I had on hand, and it's just for purposes, you know, just to show you how it's gonna work. So that one took a few tries, and that was against the grain. I'll go with it. And these are just box cutters. I don't think the X-Acto knife is going to be strong enough for this kind of stuff. I'm not even going to attempt it because it'd just be a waste. With the grain, it cuts a lot better. And now with the Daveyboard, so this is going to be with the grain. So about 7 times with the grain. This is not a brand new blade, so you are gonna have to do a little bit of cleanup with that. So it's not super clean. That was with the grain. You can see it's still rough. Wonder if it's different if I do it on that side. Still with the grain. Still a little bit. So the X-Acto knife's not going to get you, or the box cutter, it's not giving me the cleanest cut, but if it's a new blade, it might be all right. Okay, so now we're going to go against the grain. Definitely using a lot less pressure than I was, you know, with the rotary cutters. I think that's what they're called. And that one I had to give a lot of pressure with, and I just don't like the feel of it. I don't feel like the grip is that good. So I would be very careful when using that for something like that. I mean, there's a reason it's for fabric. And that was a lot cleaner cut. Well, not really. Look at, it's still got all the fraying and everything on the edges. So that was against the grain. It took a few more tries against the grain, but I mean, you could still cut through it with it. Just know that maybe a brand new blade is going to be better. But I don't feel like I'm using as much energy, effort, and strength when I use the box cutters. Definitely hurts my hands to use the scissors. I don't recommend the scissors. I don't recommend the rotary cutter. It's just, unless you have something to hold that board down that keeps your hand up higher, I worry about the rotary cutter slipping or something, and the blade being very thin and the amount of pressure being given on it, I feel like it would just ruin it. But that's what I had, and you know, it's just to see how all these different things cut these different types of chipboard and bookboard and Daveyboard. So I would recommend the box cutters with a brand new blade. Be very careful, of course. You know, don't be crazy with them and stuff like that. Just be very careful. But so I would recommend the box cutters. Okay, so this is with the grain. And my wrist has already had it. So that cuts with the grain. Not too much pressure, it was fine. So now we're gonna go across it. Not too hard for either one of those. I'll try the whiteboard. Now this is going across the grain. A little bit tougher, but not too much. That was very easy, going with the grain. Okay. Now this is going to be with the grain. Not too bad. Cut pretty good. Tiny bit of fraying, but that's because there's a groove that gets created here with a lot of cutting. So a lot of times when I am cutting paper, I get one of the thin ones and I stick it at the underneath so that that groove doesn't eat up my paper. So I keep it flat, and so really all I have to do is cut to this point through my paper. And because if I go any further, it's just gonna get pushed into that groove and it's gonna chew it up, and I'm not gonna have like a clean edge. Okay, so that was with the grain, with the black one. Now we'll go against the grain. A little bit harder. I could feel that one in my shoulder. Now, this one's stronger than that one. We're going to cross the grain again here. Whew, that one was hard. Now we'll go with the grain. That was easy. So you can see going with the grain is going to cut so much easier than going across the grain or against the grain. Now, this way, so with the grain, so this is going to be against the grain. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's, I'm gonna need my husband for that one. That's going across the grain, so it's not cutting as easy. So I'm gonna try it with the grain and see if I can cut through this. And this isn't even the Daveyboard yet. This is just still chipboard. Oh, okay, that took a little bit of muscle, but way easier to cut through. So if you are cutting chipboard on your guillotine, I think that's what it's called, if you're going against the grain, you're gonna have a hard time. You're gonna be wearing yourself out. So with the grain, much easier. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and try the Daveyboard. So let's see if I could do this. I finally got a piece. It took me about 10 tries to cut that out. So, you know, it could be very exhausting. Okay, so we are going to be going across the grain with this cut to see how this does with it. Oh my goodness. This is definitely harder than that other board I had. That's not going anywhere. So that's going across the grain. Yeah, I didn't cut through it. You can see how it goes into the groove down here, and that's what I'm talking about with the paper. If I did cut through, all that would be kind of chewed up by that groove. Okay, so now we'll go with the grain. And it cuts fine, just as hard as it was to do this one. It was the same. It wasn't that hard. So if you're cutting, you know, like I was saying before, if you're cutting with the grain, it's easier. It's way easier. But if you're gonna cut against the grain, it's gonna be a lot harder to do that with this machine. So if you're like me and your wrists tend to give you a lot of problems and your hands and whatnot, getting it pre-cut, if you don't have somebody else who can probably, you know, be a little bit more stronger than you are in cutting it, you might need just somebody stronger to cut it for you, or, you know, you might want to just get it pre-cut. And I mean, to me, it's worth it if you're going to get it pre-cut. That's one step you don't have to really worry about. Everything else is not going to be hard to cut. All the rest of the other materials, you're going to just, you know, use scissors and a cutting board and things like that. But for this particular board, I would say, I mean, if you're going to cut with the grain, it's easy to cut. But if you're going to cut against the grain, it's going to be hard. And at some point, you're probably going to have to cut against the grain. And that could be really hard. Scissors didn't do good with the Davey board, or too good with any of the boards really, because it's just really, it takes a lot of strength in your hand to cut all that with scissors. The rotary cutters, like I said, I don't like the control with them like that. You do got to give it a little bit more strength, and it's just, I don't know. After seeing myself do it, I don't know, I don't care to use it. It feels harder, and it's not as much control. And these, I feel like I have a lot more control, and I'm not giving as much effort or pressure when I'm cutting with it, so I can go over it a little bit easier and not wear myself out too much. Now the cutting board or the guillotine, I don't recommend it for it. It does cut good when you go with the grain, but against the grain it's really hard. But my deal is, I don't want to ruin my blade on my big cutting machine. I don't want to ruin my blade on that and wear it out easier or bend it in some kind of way. So I know some of my viewers have had, you know, questions about, they wondered about this kind of stuff as well. You know, can we cut it with the big old guillotine? Is it going to work with that and stuff? And, you know, and with the grain, like I said, it does well, but against it, it's going to be really, really hard. And so I think the best bet is going to be the box cutters, but I would start with a brand new blade. And you know, you can probably use scissors just to kind of clean up the edges a little bit, but you're going to want some good box cutters that are going to cut through that. And so that's what I recommend to cut it. I think it's going to be okay for the Davey board if you have a new blade. So these are all pretty close in size. So we got the white one, the black one, the brown one. These are all from the 8.5 by 11. This is the 12 by 12, and this is the Davey board. I'm gonna do the because imagine this is like, would be like your spine of your book. Okay, so already we can see this one's already curving. So if I put it on the board, you can see it is lifted quite a bit. The black one is lifted quite a bit as well. The brown one is lifting quite a bit. The 12 by 12, not lifting as much, but I'm going to give it a little bit more time since these ones went first. But not lifting as much so far. And the Daveyboard is almost completely flat. I'm trying to make this to where you can see it the best. But yeah, that's a, let's see how big a gap that is. So I can fit the other board in there, the other 8.5 by 11 width in there, and still have room. So that's how much it's, you know, I could put that all the way through. That's how much that one's already curved. The black one, I can get it through. Not, I can tell it's a little less bowed than the white one. Is this the white one? This is the brown one. It's bowing just as much. This is the 12 by 12. And this is that denser chipboard. Yeah, I'm not getting a gap. And the Daveyboard, I'm not getting a gap. So that's just something else you could see, like how they behave when you add the glue to them. So, I mean, you can see the Daveyboard, it's not warping or anything. Even the 12 by 12, it's not as bad. It's got only the slightest curve in it, but it's still just chipboard, so it's still going to have that tendency to break down. It still has that flaw, that it's not gonna last as long as the Daveyboard. So that's it for this video. I'd just like to take a second to thank all of my subscribers for watching, for liking, and for sharing my videos. You've really helped my channel to grow. And to all my new subscribers, we're at 251 subscribers as of right now, and that is awesome. So I just want to say welcome, welcome. And I hope you like this video, and there's more to come. And please continue to like and share these videos. You really do help my channel to grow, and I appreciate you all very much. And so that's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one.